have an escaped dinosaur. Hold on, what's going on? How did you get out? Oh my god, hold on. That's the second time these guys gotten out. Okay, Hello everyone and welcome back to Mini NUBLAR. Pay no attention to the escaped Velociraptor. That's totally fine. That's not an issue at all. There she is. We're on it. We're on top of it. It'll be fine. It is the 11th episode of this building series, and logic would dictate that we build something over here. Like, that makes sense, right? This is what we did in the previous episode with our Allosaurus abandoned campsite, complete with destroyed jeeps. So yeah, it would make sense to branch out over here. Well, my channel is not about sense. My channel is about, well, paths and planters, basically. So I'm actually gonna be working on this area right here, the point of NUBLAR, and we're gonna be turning this into a like little mini Malta on Mini NUBLAR. Oh my god, the titles write themselves. I am a poetic genius. Shakespeare has been real quiet since I just said that. So yeah, I'm gonna make a Malta, and the idea here is that it's sort of like, you know, like a little coastal city. So we're gonna go for a lot of buildings, like an obnoxious amount of buildings, honestly. And then, like, yeah, there's gonna be streets where our guests can walk, but then when they take a side street, they happen upon what's an exhibit, but the exhibit is sort of just made to look like it's part of the actual city. So it seems like the dinosaurs are walking around freely, but they're not, except for this Velociraptor right here. Well, she's not walking anymore, that's for sure. Where is she? No, but like for real, where is she? Oh, over here. Let's get this one. No, that's not it. Transport there. You go back in here now, lovely. Okay. So what we're obviously going to be using for this episode are Atrociraptors. I kind of like the idea of also having Allosaurus and Carnotaurus for obvious reasons, you know, if we're going to take the inspiration very literally. Interestingly though, both those species are already in the park, so that's not gonna happen. I think I need to make this a little bit bigger. So I think we're gonna do a different species. I don't think it's gonna be just Atrociraptors. Oh, speaking of more species, I took 2 suggestions for dinosaurs to put in here. Let me slow down the speed. One of the like highest liked comments was a suggestion to add Crichtonsaurus in this little I think they're gonna do a social. Let's look at the social. Come on then. Oh, they're so cute. Aww. So yeah, Crichtonsaurus, I think that's a perfect size for this little wall, but there was also a comment that suggested Chunkingosaurus and said that Chunkingosaurus doesn't get enough love, and I agree. I love Chunkingosaurus, but I feel like I'm the only one. So as soon as I saw Chunkingosaurus pop up in the suggestions, I knew, yes, this comment right here, I'm doing it. And I mean, looking at the size, I think that also works really well with this wall. And if we go back to the exhibit that we worked on previously, I'm adding a Laura Titan, and what's also being flown in currently as we speak is Pachycephalosaurus. Okay, so for the rest of this video, we're gonna have to do it a little bit differently. I've turned it into a speed build, and this was necessary because I actually spent 2 hours building this mini Malta on Mini NUBLAR. So we're starting with the street layout, the path layout, and like my beginning point here was a literal public square, and from there off we're gonna branch in 4 different directions. And again, the idea here is that some paths, most paths, will be accessible to guests, but not all of them. Some of the paths will just be like incorporated into a habitat, and our guests will be looking down a street thinking, hey, this looks like the streets that I just walked down, but oh my god, there's an Atrociraptor right there. So that's the feeling that we're going for. The layout is pretty random, I guess. I sort of went with, like, you know, narrow streets evoking that old city feel. Now, you see this like first version of it, I did get a little bit too thick with the paths, this like main line in particular, because I wanted to add another color to it. I'm gonna get rid of that. I really wanted the streets to be quite narrow, so you would have a little bit of a closed-in feeling. Because, you know, streets in like old cities in Europe, they're... like the buildings are really close to you as you walk through them. So that's kind of the feeling that I was going for. So you can see here that we're just starting over a little bit with the path layout. I'm mixing a lot of the different path colors together. That might be one of the things that the path purists among us won't appreciate. I was like you, don't worry. You know, someday you're just gonna embrace the path randomness and the path, like, messiness. I just felt like that worked really well with the whole city feel, to mix up the colors. We had a little bit of an issue where, for some reason, the pteranodons were a threat to guests. I don't know what happened there. It's not important. So I placed the Malta Hotel there. We are gonna just pretend that for the park's function, the hotel is actually something else, because I don't necessarily think it makes sense to have hotels this deep into the park. Imagine having to drag your suitcase all the way over there. This is going to be the aviary for the Dimorphodon. Really what I went with, since we already have Allosaurus and Carnotaurus in the park, I was just thinking back about the other creatures that we saw in the Malta scene. And of course in the Black Market scene we saw several creatures, but the standouts for me were Lystrosaurus and Stygimoloch. So those are the two other additions alongside Atrociraptor that's going to make it into this mini Malta. Now I'm just like playing around with these buildings, which again don't have a guest function, but we're gonna pretend that there's something else. Just as the hotel is something other than a hotel, the staff center is gonna be something other than a staff center, because really those are just the best buildings. The hotel, the staff center, which I just realized I haven't actually used that much, and the bunker. Those are like the best buildings for that Malta look. It's kind of a shame that the guest amenity buildings that we have don't have a, like, really convincing Malta look to them. Not at all, actually. But at the end, I did take the time to customize all of the buildings, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. If you just give them the right coloration, it really fits in very well with like the Malta aesthetic. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. Yes, for once I customized my buildings. Okay, so really the whole process here is just to place a lot of buildings, because, you know, we're going for that city feel. Oh, little sidetrack here. I tried to get a tour in. I did really like the idea of having vehicles driving around. I felt like that would make the city come to life a little bit more. And as you can see, I'm like finagling with it, trying to have it cross the path. And it was a whole thing. Like I did all of this only to realize in the end that really a tour doesn't work, because it's gonna get in the way of a lot of the building placements. So you can see here I'm testing this one out. So like, okay, that one fits, but immediately that one doesn't. And yeah, I just realized that it would get in the way of too many buildings, so it would obstruct that city feel that we're going for. Now, I did leave this random crosswalk. What do you even call it? Like, it has no function anymore. It just looks completely illogical there, but I liked that it was just something different. So that's why I kept it there, and I put the path on either side of it, so it was just like a little bit of visual interest, I guess. I just liked it. I have no explanation. My pathwork in this one is quite different from usual, but I'm telling you, it worked out so well in the end. I will admit that as I was like placing all of these buildings, I was getting like a little worried that it wasn't necessarily gonna work the way I intended, because, you know, we don't have that many great Malta buildings. Like, a lot of them are just messy, and I didn't want to have too much of that. And, you know, the buildings also just feel a little bit sparse. So as I was placing all of this, I definitely was thinking to myself, okay, is this actually gonna pan out the way I intended? But when I started adding in the decorations, like at the last step, obviously, it all came together and I feel like it really worked out so well. And this is not me patting myself on the back. This is like I'm not trying to convey to you that sometimes you really have to trust the process. You really just have to stick with it. You might second guess your best laid plans, but in the end, you can really pull everything together. So I'm really excited about like the end result that was achieved here. But yeah, I was definitely I was doubting myself and the game and everything. And that was also one of the reasons why at like about the 30-minute mark I realized, okay, I'm gonna have to commit to this being a speed build, because I could tell that not only was there not that much progress in the 30 minutes, it was also just a case I was so, on one hand, really focused, and also on the other hand, like getting a little bit demotivated and frustrated. So I really noticed that I was getting quieter and quieter because I was like, this isn't working. I'm wasting my time here. But I didn't. I'm so happy that I didn't, because yeah, it took me 2 hours to get there, but oh my god, it was so worth that time. All right, so we're still in the process of just placing buildings, which is another reason why I feel like a speed build was the right way to go here, because it is a little bit of a duller build, maybe. At least if you were to look at this in like real time, you know, trying to fit all of these buildings together like puzzle pieces. I don't know what happened there. I don't remember. I was so in the zone, I don't remember. Okay, so I did have some issues with the terrain constraints, which we can all relate to. Oh, a beautiful moment is about to happen. Hold on, when is it gonna happen? Oh my god. I was like, is this it? Is this it? Hold on. Hold, please. This is exciting, okay? This... Oh, no. I'm a little bit too soon. Here! Oh, that fits so well. I remember that. I don't remember what was wrong with the Velociraptor, but I remember that. But yeah, I ran into some terrain constraints, unfortunately, with the buildings for some reason being like aquaphobic. They really had to have a huge distance between, like, you can see right there, that was just ridiculous. That terrain constraints, it's stupid. So in the end, it's gonna happen yeah, there you go. I did change the coastline. Now, initially when I started this build, I was like, I'm not gonna do that. Because we want to honor, like, the shape of NUBLAR. I spent a lot of time perfecting the shape of NUBLAR, so I don't want to change that. But at this point, I was in that I'm frustrated, I'm losing faith in my building abilities, and I just wanted that building over there, and I justified it by myself with like, okay, if the game is being unreasonable and illogical, I can take some measures here. So yeah, that is the one time in this whole build so far that I changed the coastline. I'm sorry. Let's just pretend that we dumped some extra sand in there. Look, I'm Dutch. We are very familiar with reclaiming land from the ocean. Okay, we've made a whole province out of it, so it's what we do. I'm honoring my heritage. This is my culture. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. Okay, so this street that I'm building right here is gonna be like the main street where the Atrociraptors are gonna be walking around. And so like the path isn't connected to the guest path over there, so we could still like fit the invisible fencing through there. And the idea here is that, you know, as guests walk down that curved path, when they look to their right, they look down this main street and then they might catch a glimpse of the Atrociraptor walking around over there, which I thought was just really cool, because I imagine that it would feel very immersive, because the streets that are part of the habitat look exactly the same as the streets that you're walking on as a guest. So I think that worked out really, really well. She's thinking about stuff. She's thinking so hard right now. It's kind of like I'm rewatching this. This is literally from this morning, but it's funny to watch me struggle. Okay, so those are the two entrance points to this whole section. I did want to have like two paths connecting into the rest of the park instead of just one, so that people wouldn't have to double back the whole way. And this is one of the little alleyways that, you know, people would sneak in between the buildings. And in this instance, there's just a viewing gallery there that looks down the entire length of what's going to be the Stygimoloch habitat. Okay, so now we're back on the ocean side. I'm just trying so hard to fit all of these buildings in here. This is going to be the Lycosaurus habitat that we're looking in right now. So that street is all for the Lycosaurus. Now, I closed off the beach section. I'm actually going to change that later on. So I'm giving the Lycosaurus like a little bit of access behind the building, so their habitat is bigger and also a little bit more natural than just like the streets of shopping amenities and stuff like that. But yeah, that's really cool. So our guests can stand like on either end of that street, but they can't walk along the street because it is a habitat. Anyway, the part of the build that is just me placing a lot of buildings has finally come to an end. I can start with the decorations and also, not unimportantly, actually turning the areas into functional animal enclosures, and to ensure that, you know, the Atrociraptors, they stay in their own designated streets and don't wander out into the streets where our guests are actually going to be walking. So the invisible fence I hide in the shallows of the quote-unquote oceans. It's kind of weird that we have to hide invisible fencing, but there you have it. Oh god, no, we're back to placing more buildings. I'm joking. But yeah, this part of the build is just me defining what's going to be the 3 dinosaur habitats. So this is going to be for the Atrociraptor. The Atrociraptor habitat is basically the entire point, like the sharp point of NUBLAR is all going to be Atrociraptor habitat. And of course we have the habitat for the Lycosaurus and the Stygimoloch as well. The buildings do a lot of the work in containing the dinosaurs. They have their own hitbox on it that will keep the dinosaurs from wandering outside. Any place where you might feel like, hey, you know, realistically, a Atrociraptor should definitely be able to sneak out through here. Well, in the game they can't, because in the game it doesn't function that way. They're running into the hitbox, and you could just like rationalize it for yourself as saying that in those little gaps there's actually invisible fencing all the way around, and that is what keeps the animal contained if you look at it like from a realism standpoint. So, you know, like all of those little nooks and crannies between all of the buildings. Yeah, sure, like a Stygimoloch and especially a Lycosaurus would realistically definitely be able to sneak through. Thankfully, it doesn't work that way in the game. And in real life, again, we have the invisible fencing to quote-unquote hide behind. So what I'm working on right now, this is like our little beach section. Why did I say it like beach section? So I placed another hotel there because they're just my favorite building. And yeah, this is just where our guests can come and work on their tan, because, you know, that's why you come to a dinosaur park, to work on your tan. They're basically pre-roasting themselves before feeding themselves to the dinosaurs. That just got really dark. I definitely could have used this like beach section to house another animal. That's totally something that you can do if you're gonna go for a look like this. But I personally felt that it was just really important to make space for city elements like this. You know, Malta / Mediterranean / coastal city elements, which would be an access area to the beach for the residents of the city. And like, it's a fake city, you know, there's not actually people living here. It's part of the theme park. But as part of a theme park, it also works. Like, yeah, people don't actually come to a dinosaur park to work on their tan. I know that. But people did travel to a remote island in a tropical part of the world. So it would make sense that, you know, if they're staying in a dinosaur park for several days, that, yeah, maybe they would, like, take an afternoon to spend some time just playing on the beach. The rest of the build is really focused on placing a lot of decorations. Obviously, I'm using the Malta decorations most of all. The wall pieces and the towers are super useful in giving the buildings more of that Malta look, hiding the back of the buildings, which is something that I always do. I think that's super important. You don't want your guests to be looking at literal trash cans and just like the utility area behind buildings. Lining the paths, adding a lot of planters as well to add more green and make it look decorated and more like a city and also more like a theme park. Like those two have quite a bit in common in like the amount of detail that there is to the streets that you navigate as you go through them. What I really liked about this build, what I enjoyed about the building process, is that it was very different from how you would normally build your parks. You know, normally you have like paths snaking through your park, you have guest sections, but they're not as built as something like this. You know, you don't have like this massive condensed cluster of buildings normally, and I really enjoyed doing that. Like, yeah, it was a process with placing all of the buildings and all of the decorations on top of that, but it was really different from a usual park build, which I enjoyed doing. You know, once I realized that the pieces were falling into place. Once that happened, I started to enjoy it, but also the result is just really different from how the rest of the park looks, and I think that's really awesome. And finally, it's also like a great use of these Malta buildings, not just like the Malta Hotel and stuff like that, but you know, the staff center. If you're using mods, you could even put in like the acquisition center and a ranger station. And I say if you use mods because those buildings have like really cool corners or walls to them, but there's obviously also a lot about those buildings that is not suitable for something like this. But if you have the free build mod, you can lay like several buildings on top of each other so that you hide the parts of a building that wouldn't fit within a city theme, and you expose the parts, you know, that do add to that city feeling. So yeah, if you have mods, you can get like even better use out of the buildings. But as for now, I'm still playing the game unmodded, and I think it turned out really, really great. Especially once I start customizing those buildings, it really comes together. Because like right now, they're very they stick out like a thorsome. That's what I was gonna say. They stick out like a thorsome with like the thatched roof and the Jurassic Park entrance. But once I started changing those, that was like really the finishing touch on the whole thing. Speaking of finishing touches, I'm adding like these biosyn lights as street lights, which I think work really well. I think they really have that look, and again, it's just part of selling the idea that it's all supposed to be like a miniature city. What I'm doing right here is I'm adding a little plaza inside of what is going to be the Atrociraptor habitat, and this just really blurs the line between what is actual guest area where people can walk and what is part of the city where our dinosaurs are quote-unquote free roaming. Like, it really adds to the illusion to have tables and chairs and path and planters and fountains in the area where the dinosaurs are walking. A little moment to shout out the new parasols from the Jurassic Park free decorative update. I initially didn't think I would get much use out of like individually placeable parasols, but I really liked putting them on these beach sections, some open, some closed, again to add to the illusion that people were there to open some of them but leave the other ones closed. It just works so well for a beach section because, you know, there would be, like in a resort, there would be parasols there for the guests to use as they work on their tan. I didn't want to leave the invisible fencing exposed because it looks very modern. It didn't fit with the city. So that's why I did layer the low wall pieces in front of that. And also it just works for realism's sake. You know, 100% guests would walk over invisible fencing as if they could. Like, yes, people are that stupid. So the low Malta wall pieces are just another example of what I call my stupidity barriers. They're very important. So I'm just like finishing off this main street with a couple of the decorations at the end. Because of the terrain constraints, I couldn't fit any more buildings back there. But honestly, even though I did like mumble and groan about that for quite a bit, that I couldn't fit buildings at the very end there at the point, it really wasn't necessary, because from the perspective of the guests, you're not really seeing that far down the street anyway. The buildings earlier on in the street block most of the perspective of that, so it was fine. But I did mope about it a little bit. Okay, so we're really like in the final phase of this build, which is adding, you know, the final foliage details and stuff like that. If you're still watching the video at this point, thank you very much. I appreciate you. You're a legend. I apologize about the whole speed build thing. I don't know if you're still here, then maybe you're enjoying it. If you are, give the video a like. You know, the speed build aspect of it, that's not the plan for future mini NUBLAR building episodes. You know, I like the real-time building part of this series. We do a lot of speed builds on the channel already, right? So this is not a change for the series, but at this point into the video, I hope you realize that for this specific build, it was necessary to turn it into a speed build, because there's just so much detail all around this city. And again, it took me 2 hours to do all of this work, which is the equivalent of what 2 normal mini NUBLAR episodes would have been. Like, I always record for an hour, and I managed to cut it down to about a half-hour episode. So 2 hours of building would have logically resulted in 2 half-hour episodes of just, like, the first episode would have just been placing buildings, and then the second episode would have just been placing all of these decorations. I really don't think it would have worked as a normal episode. So yeah, but don't worry, we're not gonna do this for the future episodes. That was like the whole point that I was trying to make, as I'm still placing even more details in the background. I am really happy about how this build turned out. Again, I've said this before, it definitely was worth the time and effort that I put into it, and I'm really looking forward to doing like the full showcase of mini NUBLAR. I have a feeling that this might be my favorite area of the park. So yeah, that's gonna be fun to tour this when this park is finally finished. It's gonna take a while to finish it though, even though this episode does make good progress. Like, this is a pretty substantial part of the island that I've covered with like buildings and path and like incorporate it into the park. So yeah, we got a lot of work done in this episode, but there's still plenty of episodes left for mini NUBLAR before it's time for the final tour. If you don't want to miss any of the episodes and the final tour, consider subscribing to the channel. Look, I'm sorry, I had to. Like, I'm even struggling to fill half an hour's worth of narration on this video, because it's just a lot of detail, man. It's just a lot of decorations. So yeah, I had to do like the whole YouTuber spiel. I'm sorry about that. But I do really appreciate all of the support for this building series on the channel, as well as everyone's enthusiasm with like coming through with suggestions and stuff. By the way, if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, hey, I suggested building a Malta with Atrociraptors and I didn't get like my comment shout out, that's because this was always going to be part of the plan. This was always in the back of my head, that we would have a part of NUBLAR turn into a mini Malta. So that's why there's no like specific comments shout outs for this suggestion. It was suggested many times, so I am happy that, you know, great minds think alike and you guys agree that mini Malta had to be a part of mini NUBLAR. But yeah, it was an idea that I already had, whereas with the shout out sections are for ideas that are just all you guys, and I love the like collaborative efforts that goes into this park build. So yeah, keep it coming with you guys' suggestions. I love incorporating your ideas into this park as well. Okay, so we've actually arrived at one of the final parts of this build, which is another beach section, but this time it's like half beach, half paved area. but it's all for the Atrociraptors. But again, we're just using it as another example to blur the lines between what is guest appropriate and what is actual dinosaur habitat. And stuff like, you know, the parasols and the tables and chairs really help with that illusion. Oh my god, and speaking of illusions, I feel like I'm there right now. I feel like I am on the beach of this fake mini Malta on fake mini NUBLAR in the tropics because it is so warm. And obviously for like recording this narration, I had to turn off the air conditioning and it is heating up in here. It is going fast. So, oh my god, I feel like I'm like suffering a heat stroke right now. This is not normal. I think like watching all of this like sandy beach and palm trees and these Malta buildings, it's also just like psychologically tricking me into thinking that it's hotter than it actually is. So maybe I did a good job building it. I don't know. If you think that I did a good job building it, let me know in a comment down below. And we're just getting like into the final bits of the build, which is just a little bit of foliage at the edge, some grass in what is going to be the sticky mollusk habitat, and then the very last part, which is something I always hate doing, but it was so important for this one. It is to customize the buildings. So I went with that entrance style because I felt like it's the most European looking. I went with the Jurassic World building style so we could change the color as opposed to just having a lot of concrete. And then all of the buildings in Mini Malta, they have like, you know, different roof decorations, different ground decorations, different signage and all of that. And for the colors, I'm just using the color wheel to match it to the Malta wall pieces as best as I possibly could. Since I had to resort to turning this episode into a speed build, I did want to end the video with a bit of an overview of what I'd done. So this is our completed mini Malta on mini NUBLAR. We have the sticky mollusks in this exhibit back here. Just, you know, quite natural. Again, this is like a transition from, you know, the fully like urban area, so to speak, and what's going to be, you know, again, more luscious nature for the rest of the park. We have Dimorphodon in the aviary, if I can see the little... There they are, flappity flappity flap. Lystrosaurus are in this street, and you can see that... Oh, look at them. They're so sleepy. So you can see that's actually quite a big habitat, but for realism's sake, what I did was add like a little side area. So this is, you know, so they have a little bit of nature where they can like escape to and get away from people gawking at them all of the time. And then the final and main creature of this mini Malta is the Atrociraptor. Now, of course, I put in the squad. So we have, you know, Ghost, Panthera, Red, Tiger. But I also added just like a couple of the regular Jurassic World Evolution skins. Oh, social. And whoop. I also added, you know, extra ones with just the regular skins because it's a pretty big habitat. Like, all right, if I do it like that, there. Oh, hold on. There, see, you can see how big the habitat actually is. So we needed more individuals to really fill out the space, but I'm so happy with how this turned out. I'm sorry about turning it into a speed build. I hope that you enjoyed the video regardless. If you did, please give it a like, and I promise that future episodes will just return to the regular building style. By the way, of course, like a full tour of all of this, the whole park will happen when the park is finished. So, you know, so I'm not gonna take us through the streets or anything. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, enjoy the game.